Welcome to the Friday Pastor's Devotional on YouTube. I'm Bob Lee, pastor here at Huguenot Road Baptist Church, just southwest of the city of Richmond in Virginia. I'm grateful that you've chosen to spend a few minutes of your day with me, and I hope that our time together is helpful and encouraging to you. Today, I'd like to talk about one of the challenges that many of us face, and that is finding a church home. Talking a little bit about church hopping. And to help us in our time together, I'm using a book I've shared with you before. It's entitled The Screwtape Letters by C.S. Lewis. And if you haven't read the Screwtape Letters before, just a quick heads up, it is a book that C.S. Lewis wrote where he has imaginary characters that are devils. Uncle Screwtape and his evil nephew Wormwood. So in each of the chapters, and they're pretty short chapters, a page and a half or so each, in each of the chapters, Uncle Screwtape is writing his nephew Wormwood and giving Wormwood instructions on how to get Christians to be indifferent to their faith, or to weaken their faith. And in chapter 26, where I'm focusing on today, Uncle Screwtape is trying to help Wormwood convince Christians how to become indifferent to church. He doesn't want them in church. And here's a quote. "Surely you know that if a man can't be cured of church going, the next best thing is to send him all over the neighborhood looking for the church that suits him until he becomes a taster or connoisseur of churches." A taster or connoisseur of churches. So let that sink in for a minute. If the devil or the adversary can keep Christians, or anybody for that matter, if they can keep them church hopping, then they never really sink into the teaching of the church. They're just a taster or a connoisseur. Lewis is pointing out that constantly searching for a church that perfectly fits our preferences can actually hinder our spiritual growth. Sometimes people say, well, I'm trying to find the perfect church. I think it was Charles Spurgeon who said, when you find the perfect church, the moment that you walk in the door, it is no longer perfect. Well, Screwtape gives two reasons why he doesn't want believers getting into a habit of worshiping in a good church. First, C.S. Lewis writes that churches create unity, that people from different backgrounds and different classes come together to worship under the name of Christ. So Uncle Screwtape does not want people to be exposed to this kind of unity, fellowship, and belonging. And secondly, he says it turns a man or a person into a pupil instead of a critic. That's what churches do. When you're involved in a regular church under the teaching of the Holy Spirit on a regular basis, consistently, habitually worshiping, we become pupils or learners or disciples rather than just being critics. In other words, when we plant ourselves into a church family, we stop consuming and we start growing. Lewis concludes that keeping someone church hopping can succeed in giving them a watered down or a lukewarm faith. And that's quite sobering. The Bible echoes this in Hebrews chapter 10, verse 25, where the writer says, "Do not give up meeting together as some are in the habit of doing, but encourage one another all the more as you see the day approaching." In other words, worship matters, and not just occasionally, but regularly. You might say, well, why, Pastor Bob? Because worship is not about us. It's about God. Worship is about God. It's God's design for us. Worship helps us. It renews us, grounds us. Even modern studies confirm that worship helps humans flourish. It helps us flourish spiritually, emotionally, even physically. There are physical benefits to worshiping regularly. Lower heart rate and more calm demeanor and so forth. So maybe the most countercultural thing and life-giving thing we can do this week is to worship, to show up, to commit, to be the pupil, not the critic. I hope this is helpful, and I look forward to seeing you in worship soon. God bless.